I just want to check my balance, Billionaire laughed. Until she saw the screen. The glass doors of Sterling Private Wealth Management barely registered the small hand that pushed against them. At 9 years old, Zara Williams had learned that most doors in the city didn't open for people like her. But this one did, sliding apart with a whisper of expensive engineering, releasing a wave of cold air that smelled like leather and something else she couldn't name. Money, maybe. The kind that didn't need to announce itself. Her sneakers, 3 sizes too big and held together with safety pins, squeaked against marble so white it looked like it had never been walked on. The sound echoed through the lobby, loud enough to make every head turn. Zara felt their eyes on her like searchlights, examining the dirt under her fingernails, the tangles in her hair that hadn't seen a brush in days, the oversized jacket that hung past her knees because it had belonged to someone bigger, someone who didn't need it anymore. The woman behind the reception desk looked up from her computer screen, and Zara watched her face do that thing faces always did. That quick calculation, that instant decision about whether Zara was worth her time. The receptionist's expression settled somewhere between annoyance and disgust. "Excuse me, young lady," the woman said, her voice sharp as the creases in her designer blouse. "This is a private financial institution. Are you lost?" Zara's hand went to her pocket, fingers closing around the small plastic card she'd been carrying for 3 months. Ever since the morning she'd found it in the mailbox of the condemned building where she and her sister slept on cardboard, wedged between eviction notices and advertisements for payday loans. "I need to check my account," Zara said, her voice coming out smaller than she'd wanted. She cleared her throat and tried again. "I have a card." The receptionist's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose so high they nearly disappeared into her hairline. "An account. Here." She let out a sound that wasn't quite a laugh, but definitely wasn't kind. "Sweetheart, I think you're confused. This isn't a regular bank. Perhaps you're looking for the community branch on 5th Street? They handle accounts for situations like yours." Situations like yours. The words hung in the air like smoke. Zara knew what they meant. Poor. Homeless. Black. Other. Before Zara could respond, movement caught her attention. A woman was crossing the lobby with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. She was maybe 50, her silver hair cut in a style that looked both casual and impossibly expensive, wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. Her heels clicked against the marble with the rhythm of someone who owned not just the room but the building, possibly the entire city block. Victoria Sterling. Even Zara, who spent most of her time trying to be invisible, knew that name. Victoria Sterling's face smiled down from billboards across the financial district, always with that same expression that suggested she'd never encountered a problem money couldn't solve. At 52, she'd built Sterling Private Wealth Management from a single office into a network spanning 12 countries. She managed portfolios for tech founders, entertainment moguls, and families whose wealth dated back to before the Civil War. The business magazines called her the Queen of Finance. The employees called her the Ice Queen, though never where she could hear. And right now, the Ice Queen was staring directly at Zara with an expression that made the air conditioning feel warm by comparison. "Jennifer," Victoria called to the receptionist, her voice cutting across the lobby with surgical precision. "Is there a reason we have a homeless child in our building? I thought we had protocols for this sort of thing." The words landed like slaps. Around the lobby, other clients turned to stare. A man in a suit worth more than a car shook his head. A woman with a diamond necklace that caught the light like a constellation whispered something to her companion. They were all looking at Zara the way you'd look at something unpleasant someone had tracked in on their shoe. "Ma'am," Jennifer began, standing up from her desk. "The child claims she has an account, but obviously that's not possible. I was just about to call security to escort her out." "An account," Victoria repeated, and this time she did laugh. It was a sharp, bright sound, like glass breaking. "Look at her, Jennifer. She's got dirt on her face and clothes that look like they came from a donation bin 3 years past their expiration date. The only account she's familiar with is probably counting out food stamps." More laughter rippled through the lobby. The man in the expensive suit pulled out his phone, and Zara knew he was probably recording. She'd seen it before, people filming kids like her, posting videos online with captions about what's wrong with the city, or where are the parents or worse. Zara wanted to run. Every instinct screamed at her to push back through those glass doors and disappear into the streets where at least people had the decency to ignore her instead of making her into entertainment. But then she thought about Lily, her 6-year-old sister, back at the shelter, asking that morning if they'd have breakfast. She thought about the card in her pocket, the one that had come with a letter in handwriting she still saw in her dreams. "I have a card," Zara said again, louder this time. Her voice shook, but she forced her legs to move, to carry her across that impossible distance toward Victoria Sterling's desk. "I just want to check my balance." Victoria's expression shifted from amused to irritated. She'd clearly expected Zara to run away crying. The fact that this dirty kid was actually walking toward her, actually insisting, seemed to offend her on a personal level. "Security!" Victoria called, but held up a hand when 2 guards in crisp uniforms started moving forward. Something crossed her face, an expression Zara couldn't read. It looked almost like curiosity, but meaner. Like a cat that had spotted a mouse and decided to play before the kill. "Actually wait," Victoria said, a slow smile spreading across her face. "This might be interesting." She leaned back in her leather chair, fingers steepling in front of her. "Come here, child. Let's see this account of yours." Zara walked forward on legs that felt like they might give out. She could feel everyone watching, judging. Her 2 big sneakers seemed impossibly loud. The card in her pocket felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. When she reached Victoria's desk, she had to look up to meet the woman's eyes. Victoria was still smiling, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone about to enjoy themselves at someone else's expense. "Let me guess," Victoria said, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear. "You found this card in the trash. Or maybe you stole it from someone's mailbox. That's a federal crime, you know. I could have you arrested right now." "I didn't steal it," Zara whispered. "It came in the mail. My name is on it." "Your name is on it," Victoria repeated mockingly. "And what might that name be? Should I be expecting a trust fund baby hiding under all that grime?" "Zara Williams." Victoria's fingers flew across her keyboard, her expression one of exaggerated patience, like an adult humoring a child's ridiculous story. "Zara Williams. Well, let's see what we find, shall we? This should be fascinating." The typing seemed to go on forever. Zara could hear her own heartbeat. Around the lobby, people had stopped pretending to mind their own business. They were all watching, waiting to see this poor kid exposed as a thief or a liar or whatever Victoria Sterling decided she was. Zara's hand went to her other pocket, touching the only other thing she always carried, a small worn photograph of a woman with kind eyes and a tired smile. Her mother, from before the cancer. From before the medical bills that swallowed their savings like a black hole. From before everything fell apart. Victoria's fingers stopped typing. Her eyes locked onto the screen. For just a fraction of a second, Zara saw her confident expression flicker. It was barely noticeable, just a slight widening of the eyes, a tiny tightening around the mouth. Then the professional mask slammed back into place, and Victoria's smile grew even wider. "Well, well," Victoria said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "It appears you do have an account, Zara Williams. How about that?" She paused dramatically. "The system shows a balance of..." She stopped mid-sentence. Her eyes returned to the screen. This time, the flicker of surprise lasted longer. The smile froze on her face, taking on a strained quality. "That's impossible," Victoria whispered, so quietly only Zara could hear. "That's absolutely impossible." And in that moment, watching the Ice Queen's perfect composure crack like ice under pressure, Zara felt something she hadn't felt in 3 months. Something that felt almost like hope, but sharper, more dangerous. Because hope could hurt worse than hunger when it turned out to be wrong. But the look on Victoria Sterling's face suggested that maybe, just maybe, everything was about to change. If this story of judgment and unexpected truth is already pulling at your heart, make sure to subscribe to the channel, because what happens next will redefine everything you thought you knew about wealth, worth, and the power of a mother's love. Victoria Sterling had built her empire on the ability to read people in seconds. A glance at someone's shoes, their posture, the way they held their briefcase, and she could calculate their net worth within a margin of error so small it was almost supernatural. In 28 years of private banking, she'd never been wrong. Not once. Until now. The number on her screen didn't make sense. It couldn't be real. It had to be a system error, some kind of glitch that would be corrected the moment their IT department noticed it. because there was absolutely no possible way that this homeless child standing in front of her, this little girl who looked like she hadn't had a proper meal in weeks, could have that kind of money in an account. There seems to be a technical issue, Victoria said carefully, her professional mask firmly in place despite the chaos in her mind. The system is clearly displaying incorrect information. What does it say? Zara asked, her voice small and uncertain. Victoria looked at the girl, really looked at her for the first time. The dirt on her face wasn't just from playing outside. It was the kind of dirt that accumulated when you didn't have reliable access to clean water. Her clothes weren't just old or unfashionable. They were literally falling apart, held together with safety pins and visible repairs. The jacket hanging past her knees wasn't a style choice. It was survival, something warm that someone bigger had left behind or thrown away. This was a child living in real poverty. The kind Victoria had spent her entire life insulated from. The kind she'd maybe seen in charity commercials, but never had to personally confront. And according to the screen in front of her, this child had an account balance of $8.7 million after legal fees and taxes. "Jennifer," Victoria called out, trying to keep her voice steady. "Can you come verify something on your terminal, please?" The receptionist hurried over, her heels clicking urgently. "Yes, Ms. Sterling?" "Look up the account for Zara Williams." Victoria spelled out the account number, watching Jennifer's face carefully. Jennifer's fingers moved across her keyboard with practiced efficiency. Victoria saw the exact moment when she found the account. Her eyes went wide and all color drained from her face. "Ma'am," Jennifer whispered, leaning close so only Victoria could hear. "The balance shows." "I know what it shows," Victoria cut her off. "The question is whether you're seeing the same thing I'm seeing or if this is isolated to my terminal." "It's the same," Jennifer confirmed, her voice shaking slightly. $8.7 million. Last deposit was 3 months ago. No withdrawals, no activity of any kind since the account was opened. Victoria's mind raced. This had to be some kind of money laundering operation. Or maybe the account belonged to the kids' parents, and they were criminals who'd set up the account in their daughter's name to hide assets. That had to be it. There was no other logical explanation. "Zara," Victoria said, her tone shifting to something more serious. "I need you to be very honest with me. Where did you get this card?" "It came in the mail," Zara said. 3 months ago. There was a letter with it." "A letter from whom?" "From my mom." Zara's voice cracked slightly on the last word. "Before she died." The lobby, which had been buzzing with curious whispers, fell suddenly silent. Victoria felt something uncomfortable twist in her chest. Something that might have been shame, though she quickly pushed it away. "I see," Victoria said carefully. "And your mother was?" "A nurse," Zara said, lifting her chin slightly in defiance of the shame Victoria was clearly expecting her to feel. "She worked at County General. Night shifts, mostly. Sometimes double shifts when they were short-staffed." That made even less sense. A nurse with $8.7 million. Unless. "Zara, is it possible your mother was involved in something illegal?" Victoria asked, trying to sound diplomatic rather than accusatory. Sometimes people in difficult financial situations make choices that. "My mom wasn't a criminal," Zara said sharply, with more force than she'd shown since entering the building. "She was the best person I ever knew. She worked herself to death trying to save lives and take care of me and Lily." Victoria noticed the other clients in the lobby shifting uncomfortably. The woman with the diamond necklace who'd been laughing earlier was now staring at her designer handbag. The man in the three-piece suit had turned away, suddenly very interested in his phone. "Of course," Victoria said smoothly. "I didn't mean to suggest. Look, why don't we move this conversation somewhere more private? Jennifer, can you escort Miss Williams to conference room B?" Actually, a new voice cut in. "I'll take it from here." Victoria looked up to see Daniel Park, one of the bank's senior account managers, striding across the lobby. Daniel was 58, had been with the bank for over 20 years, and had a reputation for being both extremely competent and completely unimpressed by Victoria's usual tactics. "Daniel, I'm handling this," Victoria said, trying to inject authority into her voice. "No, Victoria, you're making a spectacle," Daniel replied calmly. "And you're about to make a very serious mistake." He turned to Zara with an expression that was actually kind, the first kind expression the girl had seen since entering the building. "Hello, Zara. My name is Daniel Park. Would you mind coming with me? We can sort all of this out in a more comfortable setting." Zara looked between the two adults, clearly unsure who to trust. Finally, she nodded. As Daniel led Zara toward the elevators, Victoria felt her control of the situation slipping away. She stood up quickly. "Daniel, I really think I should be present for." "You've done enough," Daniel said without looking back. "Stay here and attend to your other clients. I'll handle this." Victoria watched helplessly as Daniel and Zara disappeared into the elevator. Around her, the lobby was still silent. Everyone had witnessed her humiliation of a 9-year-old girl. A 9-year-old girl who apparently had more money than most of Victoria's regular clients. She sat back down at her desk, trying to regain her composure, but she could feel the stares, could sense the judgment. For the first time in years, Victoria Sterling felt something she thought she'd left behind in her childhood, back when she was Victoria Chun, daughter of immigrants who'd worked in garment factories. Shame. Upstairs, in a comfortable conference room with soft lighting and furniture that actually looked inviting, Daniel Park was making Zara feel something she hadn't felt since entering the bank: safe. "First things first," Daniel said, pouring Zara a glass of water from a pitcher on the table. "Are you hungry? I can have someone bring up some food." Zara's stomach growled audibly, answering the question. She nodded, embarrassed. Daniel picked up the phone and ordered sandwiches, fruit, and cookies. Enough for 4 people, he specified, even though there were only 2 of them in the room. When he hung up, he settled into the chair across from Zara with a gentle smile. "Better." "Why are you being nice to me?" Zara asked suspiciously. "Everyone else here looks at me like I'm trash." "Because unlike Victoria Sterling, I actually remember what it's like to have nothing," Daniel said simply. "I grew up in Koreatown in the 80s. My father drove a taxi 16 hours a day. My mother worked in a dry cleaner, and we still barely made rent most months. I was the first person in my family to go to college, and I only managed that because of scholarships and working 3 jobs." Zara studied Daniel's face, looking for signs of deception, but the older man's eyes were sincere. "Now," Daniel said, pulling out a tablet. "Let's talk about your account. I've pulled up the file, and I have to say it's quite remarkable. The account was opened 3 months ago by your mother, correct?" "I think so," Zara said. "She never told me about it. I just got the card and a letter in the mail after she couldn't finish the sentence." "May I see the letter?" Daniel asked gently. Zara pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket. It had been read and reread so many times that the creases were beginning to tear. She handed it to Daniel with trembling fingers. Daniel unfolded the letter carefully and began to read. As his eyes moved across the page, his expression shifted from professional curiosity to deep emotion. When he finished, he had to clear his throat before speaking. "Zara," he said softly, "your mother was an extraordinary woman. Can you tell me what the money is?" Zara asked. "I don't understand where it came from. We never had money. We could barely pay rent. Mom worked all the time, but we were always broke. Then she got sick and her voice broke. We lost everything. Our apartment, our stuff, everything. That's why Lily and I are at the shelter now." Daniel looked at the account details on his tablet, then back at the letter, then at Zara. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "3 months ago, your mother came to this bank. She didn't come to the main entrance. She came late at night, after her shift at the hospital. One of our newer account managers was working late and agreed to see her. Your mother told him she was sick, that the doctors had told her she didn't have much time, and she wanted to make sure you and your sister would be taken care of. But where did the money come from?" Zara leaned forward. "We were so poor. How could she have saved that much?" "She didn't save it," Daniel said gently. "The money in your account isn't from savings, Zara. It's from a life insurance policy combined with a medical malpractice settlement." "Medical what?" Zara's eyes widened. Daniel pulled up more documents on his tablet. "Your mother worked at County General for 12 years. During that time, she witnessed several instances of negligence that resulted in patient deaths. She reported them, tried to fix the problems through proper channels. The hospital administration ignored her warnings. When a major incident occurred 2 years ago, an investigation revealed that your mother had been right all along. The hospital settled with the affected families and offered your mother a substantial settlement to avoid further legal action. But we never had money, Zara whispered. We were homeless. We didn't even have enough for food. Your mother put almost all of it in trust for you and Lily, Daniel explained. She only kept enough for basic living expenses and her medical bills. According to the notes in her file, she said she'd lived her whole life without wealth and didn't need it for the time she had left. But she wanted to make sure her daughters would have opportunities she never had. Tears were streaming down Zara's face now. Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't she let me help her? We could have had a real apartment. She could have gotten better treatment, maybe lived longer. She thought of that, Daniel said gently, touching the letter. She addresses it here. Let me read you this part. Zara, by the time you read this, you'll probably be angry that I didn't use this money to make our lives easier. But baby, I didn't want your last memories of me to be about money or things. I wanted you to remember me working hard, showing you that dignity doesn't come from what you have, but from who you are and how you treat others. A knock at the door interrupted them. A young woman entered with a tray of food, set it down on the table, gave Zara a kind smile, and left. Eat, Daniel encouraged. We have more to discuss, but you need food first. Zara grabbed a sandwich and ate like she hadn't seen food in days, which wasn't far from the truth. As she ate, Daniel explained more about the account, about the trust, about how Zara would need a legal guardian to help manage things until she was older. What about Lily? Zara asked between bites. My sister. She's only 6. Can this help her too? The trust covers both of you, Daniel assured her. Your mother made sure of that. You'll each receive a monthly allowance of $5,000 until you turn 18, at which point you'll gain access to the full amount. It's structured very carefully to ensure the money lasts and grows. Zara finished 2 sandwiches and was starting on fruit when Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and frowned. It seems Victoria has been making calls, Daniel said. She's very concerned about the legitimacy of your account. She's suggesting we need to involve federal authorities, claiming this might be money laundering or fraud. Zara felt panic rising in her chest. But it's not. My mom. I know, Daniel said firmly. And I have all the documentation to prove it. The settlement agreement, the trust documents, everything is completely legitimate and legal. Victoria is Victoria is having a difficult time accepting that she was wrong. She hates me, Zara said quietly. She doesn't hate you, Daniel corrected. She hates being made to look foolish. Victoria Sterling has built her entire career on being the smartest person in the room, on being able to read people and situations instantly. You challenged that. You walked into her bank looking like someone she could dismiss, someone she could mock for the entertainment of her wealthy clients, and you turned out to have more money than she probably has personally. I'm not rich, Zara protested. I'm just me. You're a 9-year-old girl with an $8.7 million trust fund, Daniel said with a gentle smile. That makes you very rich, whether you feel like it or not. Zara looked down at her dirty clothes, her safety-pin sneakers, her hands that were still grimy no matter how much she tried to clean them at the shelter that morning. I don't feel rich. Give it time, Daniel said. Now, let's talk about what happens next. Victoria Sterling was not accustomed to being challenged. In her carefully constructed world, she was always 3 steps ahead, always in control, always the one who determined how situations would unfold. But as she sat at her desk in the lobby, watching curious clients pretend they weren't staring at her, she felt something she hadn't experienced in decades: genuine uncertainty. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel, Conference Room B. Now. And Victoria, check your ego at the door. Victoria's jaw tightened. Daniel Park had always been a thorn in her side, a reminder that success in banking didn't require the ruthless edge she'd cultivated so carefully. Daniel succeeded through patience, through genuine relationships with clients, through actually caring about the people whose money he managed. It was an approach Victoria had always considered weak, inefficient, outdated. But Daniel had also never made a mistake like the one Victoria had just made. The elevator ride to the 14th floor felt longer than usual. Victoria checked her reflection in the polished steel doors, smoothing her hair, adjusting her collar. the armor of perfection that had always protected her. Except today, that armor had cracked, and she wasn't sure how to repair it. When she entered conference room B, the scene that greeted her stopped her in the doorway. Zara was sitting at the table, eating a sandwich with the kind of desperate hunger that spoke of too many missed meals. Her face was cleaner now, someone had given her wet wipes apparently. And in the better light of the conference room, Victoria could see details she'd missed before. The girl had her mother's eyes, clearly. Large, expressive eyes that held too much sadness for someone so young. Her hands, though small, showed calluses that suggested she'd been working, taking on adult responsibilities far too early. And there was something else, a dignity in the way she held herself, even in those falling-apart clothes, that made Victoria's chest tighten uncomfortably. "Victoria," Daniel said, his tone neutral but firm. "Thank you for joining us. Please sit down." Victoria took a seat, feeling oddly like she was the one being evaluated rather than the other way around. Zara glanced at her, then quickly looked away, focusing intently on her sandwich. "I've reviewed all the documentation regarding Zara's account," Daniel began, sliding a folder across the table to Victoria. "Everything is completely legitimate. The money comes from two sources, a life insurance policy that her mother, Sarah Williams, had maintained for 8 years, and a medical malpractice settlement from County General Hospital." Victoria opened the folder and began reading. With each page, she felt her certainty crumbling further. This wasn't some criminal enterprise. This was a mother who'd loved her children so much that she'd sacrificed everything, literally everything, to ensure they'd be taken care of after she was gone. Sarah Williams worked as a nurse at County General for 12 years, Daniel continued. She witnessed systematic negligence that resulted in patient deaths. When she reported it, the administration retaliated by cutting her hours and making her working conditions impossible. But she kept detailed records, documented everything. When a major incident occurred, her documentation became crucial evidence. The hospital offered her $6 million to settle and avoid a public trial. Victoria felt something cold settle in her stomach. She thought about County General, the public hospital that served the city's poorest residents. She'd driven past it countless times, never giving it a second thought. She put $5.5 million directly into this trust for her daughters, Daniel went on. She kept only $500,000 for living expenses and medical bills. According to the lawyer who handled the settlement, Sarah was already sick by then. She knew the cancer treatment would be expensive and likely unsuccessful. She chose to ensure her children's future rather than extend her own life. Zara had stopped eating. Her hands were clenched in her lap, and Victoria could see tears streaming silently down her face. The life insurance policy added another $3.2 million, Daniel explained. Sarah had been paying into it since Zara was born, even when money was impossibly tight. Small payments, sometimes only $50 a month, but she never missed one. Not once in 9 years. Victoria looked at the numbers, the dates, the meticulous documentation. Sarah Williams had worked 60 to 70 hours a week, raised 2 children alone, fought a hospital's corruption, and still found the energy and resources to secure her daughter's future. While Victoria had been spending thousands on business lunches she barely touched, this woman had been choosing between feeding her children and making insurance payments. And she'd chosen both, somehow finding a way. "Where is Zara living now?" Victoria heard herself ask. "At Mercy House Shelter," Daniel said. "She and her 6-year-old sister Lily have been there for 3 months, since Sarah died and they lost their apartment." "A shelter," Victoria repeated. The word felt foreign in her mouth. "But she has $8.7 million. Why is she living in a shelter?" "Because she's 9 years old and didn't know the money existed until she found the card," Daniel said with unusual sharpness. "And when she finally worked up the courage to come here, she was humiliated and nearly thrown out by security." The words landed like physical blows. Victoria looked at Zara, really looked at her, and saw something she'd been deliberately avoiding. This child had walked into the bank terrified, desperate, hoping for help. And Victoria had chosen cruelty. She'd chosen to make herself feel powerful by making a homeless child feel small. "I made a mistake," Victoria said quietly. The words felt strange, unpracticed. She couldn't remember the last time she'd admitted being wrong. "You made several mistakes," Daniel corrected. "You judged a child by her appearance. You humiliated her publicly. You accused her of being a thief in front of a lobby full of witnesses. And even now, after seeing all this documentation, your first question wasn't about Zara's well-being. It was about why she's still in a shelter, as if that's somehow her fault. Victoria wanted to defend herself, to explain that she'd built her career on reading people quickly, on making instant assessments. But looking at the evidence in front of her, at Zara's tear-stained face, at Daniel's disappointed expression, she realized that all her explanations were just excuses. What do we do now? Victoria asked. Now we help, Daniel said firmly. Zara and Lily need a legal guardian until Zara turns 18. The trust provides funding for guardian compensation and all living expenses. We need to move them out of the shelter immediately, get them into stable housing, enrolled in good schools, connected with support services. I can arrange housing, Victoria found herself saying. We own several residential properties through our real estate portfolio. I can have a 2-bedroom apartment prepared within 48 hours. Both Daniel and Zara looked at her in surprise. Why? Zara asked, her voice barely audible. Why would you help me? You hate me. I don't hate you, Victoria said, and realized it was true. She struggled to find words for feelings she'd spent years avoiding. I'm ashamed. Of how I treated you. Of how I've built my career on judging people by their bank accounts instead of their character. Your mother was worth 100 of me, and I never would have seen that if she'd walked into this bank, because I would have looked at her the same way I looked at you. My mom always said that mean people are usually just scared people, Zara said softly. She said when someone is cruel, it's because they're afraid of something. What am I afraid of? Victoria asked, genuinely curious. Zara thought for a moment. Maybe that you're not as special as you think you are. That without your money and your nice clothes, you're just a regular person like everyone else. The observation was so accurate, so painfully precise, that Victoria actually flinched. This 9-year-old had seen through her in seconds, had understood something Victoria had been running from her entire adult life. You're right, Victoria said. That terrifies me. Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at it and stood up. I need to take this. It's the social services coordinator. Victoria, can you stay with Zara for a few minutes? Before Victoria could answer, Daniel had stepped out of the room, leaving her alone with the child she'd humiliated less than an hour ago. The silence stretched between them, heavy and uncomfortable. I really am sorry, Victoria said finally. For what I said downstairs. For how I treated you. You deserved better. Zara studied her for a long moment. Are you sorry because you were wrong about the money, or are you sorry because you were mean to a kid who didn't deserve it? The question cut straight to the heart of the matter. Victoria wanted to say she was sorry for the right reasons. But the honest answer was more complicated. She was sorry because she'd been exposed as wrong in front of her clients. She was sorry because this would damage her reputation. She was sorry because it was uncomfortable to confront her own cruelty. But looking at Zara now, remembering the fear in the girl's eyes when she'd walked into the bank, remembering her own mother working 16-hour days in a factory before Victoria's father's business had finally succeeded, she felt something else stirring. A small voice that remembered being young, remembered being judged, remembered what it felt like to be treated as less than human. Both, Victoria admitted. I'm sorry for both reasons. And I know that's not good enough, but it's the truth. Zara nodded slowly. My mom used to say that being honest about being wrong is the first step to being better. She said people who can't admit mistakes never learn anything. Your mother was very wise. She was the best, Zara said, her voice breaking. And I miss her so much it feels like I can't breathe sometimes. Without thinking, Victoria reached across the table and took Zara's small hand in hers. I'm going to help you. Not to make myself feel better, not to fix my reputation, but because it's what your mother would want. She fought so hard to give you and Lily a future. I'm going to make sure you get it. For the first time since entering the bank, Zara smiled. It was small, tentative, but real. And Victoria Sterling, the ice queen of finance, felt something crack open in her chest. Something that had been frozen for a very long time. When Daniel returned to the conference room 20 minutes later, he found something he'd never expected to see. Victoria Sterling sitting on the floor with Zara, looking at the worn photograph of Sarah Williams, listening intently as the girl told stories about her mother. She used to sing to us every night, Zara was saying. even when she was so tired she could barely stand. She said music was free, and nobody could ever take it away from us. Daniel cleared his throat gently. Both looked up, and he saw that Victoria's eyes were red, though she quickly blinked and composed herself. "Sorry to interrupt," Daniel said, "but we have a situation downstairs that requires both of your attention." "What kind of situation?" Victoria asked, standing and brushing off her cream-colored suit. "The kind where your earlier performance has gone viral," Daniel said grimly, holding up his phone. "Someone in the lobby recorded the whole thing. You humiliating Zara, calling her a thief, laughing at her. It's been viewed 3 million times in the last hour. The comments are not kind." Victoria's face went pale. "Let me see." Daniel handed her the phone. Victoria watched the video, and with each second, she seemed to shrink. There she was, the ice queen of finance, mocking a homeless child for the entertainment of wealthy clients. The comments below were brutal. "This is why people hate the rich. Imagine treating a 9-year-old like this. Someone please tell me this woman got fired. That poor baby. I want to adopt her." But it was the final comment, with 500,000 likes, that made Victoria's hands shake. Plot twist: the homeless kid has $8.7 million. The successful banker has a dead soul. Who's really poor? "The press is already calling," Daniel continued. "Financial Times, Wall Street Journal, every major news outlet. They want statements. They want to know if this is how Sterling Private Wealth Management treats all its clients. Your board of directors has called an emergency meeting for first thing tomorrow morning." Victoria sank into a chair. In 1 hour, her carefully constructed reputation had collapsed. The empire she'd built over 28 years was crumbling because of 30 seconds of cruelty caught on camera. "What do I do?" she whispered. "You face it," Daniel said. "You own what you did, and you do better." "I'll tell them it was a misunderstanding," Victoria said, her mind racing. "That I was following security protocols, that I didn't know." "No," Zara interrupted. Both adults looked at her in surprise. The small girl stood up, her chin lifted with the same dignity Victoria had noticed earlier. "You don't get to lie about what happened. You were mean because you thought I was nobody. You thought it was fun to make people laugh at me. That's the truth." Victoria opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. The child was right. Any excuse, any attempt to reframe the story, would just be another lie. Another way of protecting herself at someone else's expense. "You're absolutely right," Victoria said. "That's exactly what I did." Daniel's phone rang again. He answered, listened, and his expression darkened. "We have another problem. Channel 7 News is in the lobby. They want an interview. Now." "Tell them I'm not available," Victoria said automatically. "They're not asking for you," Daniel said quietly. "They're asking for Zara. They want to hear her side of the story." "Absolutely not," Victoria said firmly. "She's a child. I won't let them exploit." She stopped, hearing her own words. "I mean, it should be her choice. Zara, you don't have to talk to anyone if you don't want to." Zara looked at the phone in Daniel's hand, at the video still playing on loop. She thought about all the times she and Lily had been invisible, all the times people had looked through them like they weren't even there. And now, suddenly, millions of people were seeing her. Really seeing her. "I want to do it," Zara said. "But only if you come with me. Both of you." 20 minutes later, they stood in the lobby. The space had been transformed into an impromptu news set, cameras and lights positioned around Victoria's desk. The reporter, a woman named Lisa Chun, approached them with a professional but kind expression. "Thank you for agreeing to speak with us," Lisa said, kneeling to Zara's eye level. "I know this has been an overwhelming day. We can stop any time you need a break, okay?" Zara nodded. The cameras started rolling. "I'm here at Sterling Private Wealth Management," Lisa began, where a video that's now been viewed over 5 million times was recorded earlier today. "With me is 9-year-old Zara Williams, the child at the center of the story, along with account manager Daniel Park and CEO Victoria Sterling. Zara, can you tell us what happened when you came to this bank today?" Zara took a deep breath. "I came to check my account balance. I have a card my mom left me before she died. But when I walked in, everyone looked at me like I was dirt. The lady at the desk said I was in the wrong place. And then Ms. Sterling said I was a homeless street kid and that I probably stole the card. How did that make you feel? Lisa asked gently. Small, Zara said, her voice wavering. Like I wasn't a real person. Like because I'm poor and my clothes are dirty, I don't deserve to be treated nice. But you did have an account here, Lisa prompted. Yes. My mom was a nurse. She worked really hard and she got some money from when the hospital where she worked did bad things. She put almost all of it in an account for me and my sister, so we'd be okay after she died. Tears were streaming down Zara's face now. She could have used that money to get better doctors, maybe live longer. But she said our future was more important than her staying alive a few more months. The camera operator, a man who'd probably filmed thousands of stories, wiped his eyes. Lisa turned to Victoria. Ms. Sterling, you're the CEO of this institution. What's your response to how this child was treated? Victoria had prepared a dozen different answers during the elevator ride down. Professional statements full of corporate language about protocol reviews and sensitivity training. But looking at Zara's tear-stained face, at the cameras broadcasting this moment to millions of people, she found she couldn't deliver any of them. There's no excuse for what I did, Victoria said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. I judged a child by her appearance. I humiliated her publicly because I thought it would be entertaining. I made assumptions about her character based on the dirt on her face and the holes in her shoes. And I was completely, absolutely wrong. What happens now? Lisa asked. Now I do everything in my power to make this right, Victoria said. Starting with an immediate policy change at Sterling Private Wealth Management. As of today, we're implementing mandatory sensitivity training for all employees. We're creating a community outreach program to provide free financial literacy education in underserved neighborhoods. And we're establishing the Sarah Williams Memorial Scholarship Fund, named after Zara's mother, to support children of healthcare workers pursuing higher education. She turned to look at Zara directly. Your mother was a hero. She saved lives as a nurse, she fought corruption, and she secured her children's future against impossible odds. The world should know her name and her story. So I'm personally donating $1 million to launch the scholarship fund in her honor. Zara's eyes went wide. $1 million. It's not enough, Victoria said honestly. Nothing I do will undo the cruelty I showed you today. But maybe, if I spend the rest of my career actually seeing people instead of judging them, I can become someone your mother would have approved of. Someone worthy of managing the trust she worked so hard to create. Ms. Sterling, Lisa said, some people watching might say this is just damage control, that you're only doing this because you got caught on camera. They'd be right, Victoria said, and the honesty of it clearly surprised the reporter. If that video hadn't gone viral, I probably would have continued being exactly the person I was this morning. Cruel, judgmental, caring more about wealth than worth. But sometimes it takes being publicly humiliated to realize you've been privately horrible. I'm grateful to Zara for holding up a mirror, even if I don't like what I see reflected. Daniel stepped forward. If I may add something, this incident reveals a larger systemic problem in the financial industry. We create spaces that are deliberately intimidating, that make people feel they don't belong unless they have a certain amount of money or wear a certain kind of clothes. Zara Williams has $8.7 million. And she was nearly thrown out by security. Imagine how we treat people with less. That has to change. The interview continued for another 20 minutes, covering everything from Sarah Williams' fight against hospital corruption to the current state of Zara and Lily living in a shelter despite having millions in trust. By the time the cameras stopped rolling, the story had evolved from wealthy banker humiliates poor child to something much larger, a conversation about class, dignity, and who society deems worthy of respect. As the news crew packed up their equipment, Victoria knelt down beside Zara. I meant what I said about the scholarship fund. And about helping you and Lily. Daniel has the contact information for 3 excellent family law attorneys who can help establish guardianship. We'll have you both out of that shelter by the end of the week. Why are you really doing this? Zara asked. Is it just because everyone's watching now? Victoria thought about lying. About giving the answer that would make her look good. But she'd done enough lying for one lifetime. Partly yes, she admitted. But also because you reminded me of someone. When I was 11 years old, my mother and I went to a bank to apply for a small business loan for my father's restaurant. The loan officer laughed at us. He said immigrants who could barely speak English had no business running a restaurant, that we should stick to factory work where we belonged. My mother was so humiliated she never went back. My father's restaurant dream died that day. I didn't know that, Daniel said quietly. Nobody knows it, Victoria said. Because I spent my entire adult life making sure nobody would ever see me the way that loan officer saw my mother. I became exactly the kind of person who hurt us. And it took a 9-year-old girl to show me what I'd become. Zara reached out and took Victoria's hand. My mom used to say everyone deserves a second chance. Even people who were really mean the first time. Victoria felt something break open in her chest, something she'd been holding closed for decades. Your mother was kinder than I deserve. As they walked toward the elevator, Victoria's phone exploded with notifications. Calls from board members, messages from clients, emails from journalists. Her career was either over or about to transform into something completely different. She wasn't sure which frightened her more. But for the first time in 28 years, Victoria Sterling wasn't thinking about her reputation or her portfolio or her status as the Queen of Finance. She was thinking about a nurse named Sarah Williams who'd worked herself to death to save her daughters. About a 9-year-old girl who'd walked into a hostile bank with nothing but hope and a plastic card. About dignity and worth, and what it truly meant to be rich. The Ice Queen was melting. And underneath, finally, was something that looked almost like a human being. 18 months later, Victoria Sterling stood at the podium of the Grand Ballroom in the Riverside Hotel, looking out at an audience of 300 people. The annual Sarah Williams Memorial Scholarship Gala had become one of the city's most anticipated charity events, raising millions for children of healthcare workers. But tonight wasn't about the money. It was about the girl in the front row, wearing a blue dress that actually fit, her hair styled in neat braids, sitting next to her 7-year-old sister Lily. Both girls were healthy, happy, thriving in ways that would have seemed impossible that morning 18 months ago. When Zara Williams walked into my bank, Victoria began, her voice steady but emotional, I saw a homeless child. Dirty, poor, unworthy of my time. I humiliated her in front of dozens of people because I'd spent my entire career believing that money determined worth. That success gave me the right to look down on anyone who had less. She paused, finding Zara's eyes in the crowd. But I was wrong. Zara wasn't the poor one that day. I was. Because I'd spent 52 years accumulating wealth while losing my humanity. Zara, even with nothing but holes in her shoes and dirt on her face, had something I'd forgotten how to recognize: dignity. The ballroom was silent. Her mother, Sarah Williams, worked herself to death saving lives. She fought corruption in a hospital system that tried to silence her. She secured her daughter's future while sacrificing her own. And she did it all while earning less in a year than I spent on business lunches. Victoria's voice cracked. That woman was worth 100 of me. And I never would have seen it if Zara hadn't forced me to look. She clicked to the next slide, showing before and after photos. Sterling Private Wealth Management's lobby, once cold and intimidating, now featured comfortable seating and bilingual staff. Training programs. Community partnerships. A complete cultural transformation. In the past 18 months, we've provided free financial counseling to over 2,000 families. We've funded scholarships for 68 students. We've created pathways for people who never thought banking was for them. And our business has grown by 42%. Turns out, treating people with dignity is not just morally right. It's profitable. Scattered laughter and applause. But the real story isn't about Sterling Private Wealth Management's transformation. It's about two little girls who lost everything and found a way forward. Zara and Lily Williams are now living in a beautiful home with their guardian, Margaret Chun, a retired teacher who loves them fiercely. They're excelling in school. They're healing. And they're teaching everyone around them what true wealth looks like. Victoria gestured for Zara to join her on stage. The 11-year-old walked up confidently, no longer the frightened child who'd pushed through glass doors hoping for help. Zara, Victoria said, what would your mother think if she could see you now? Zara thought for a moment. I think she'd say that money didn't change me. It just gave me room to become who I already was. And she'd tell everyone watching that the best way to honor her isn't feeling sorry for kids like me. It's treating everyone, rich or poor, like they matter. Because everyone does. The ballroom erupted in applause. As the gala continued, Victoria found Daniel in the crowd. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for stopping me from making it worse that day. For showing me there was still time to be better." "You did the work," Daniel replied. "I just opened the door." Later, as guests mingled over dessert, Victoria watched Zara and Lily laughing with other children, playing games, being kids. No more hunger. No more fear. No more sleeping on cardboard in condemned buildings. Sarah Williams had won. Even from beyond the grave, her love had built a fortress around her daughters that nothing could breach. Victoria's phone buzzed. Another former client, canceling their account because of her new direction. She'd lost 30% of her ultra-wealthy clients in the past year, people who didn't want a bank somewhere that welcomed everyone. But she'd gained something far more valuable, the ability to look at herself in the mirror without shame. "Ms. Sterling." A small voice interrupted her thoughts. Lily stood there, holding a drawing. "I made this for you." It showed two figures holding hands. One tall, one small. Above them, the words, "Thank you for helping us." Victoria knelt down, tears blurring her vision. "Thank you, Lily. I'll treasure this forever." As she stood to leave, Zara caught up with her. "Are you okay? You look sad." "I'm not sad," Victoria said honestly. "I'm grateful. You and your mother taught me that I'd rather be poor in money than poor in character. Because money you can always earn back. But dignity, kindness, humanity, once you lose those, no amount of wealth can buy them back." Zara hugged her. Not the hesitant embrace of obligation, but the genuine warmth of forgiveness. Later that night, alone in her office, Victoria looked at the photograph she now kept on her desk. Sarah Williams in her nurse's scrubs, tired but smiling, with Zara and Lily wrapped in her arms. A woman who'd had so little but gave so much. "I just wanted to check my balance," Zara had whispered that day. And in doing so, she'd shown Victoria that true wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in dignity given, kindness shown, and the legacy of love left behind. The Ice Queen had finally melted. And what remained was something far more valuable than she'd ever been before, simply human. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to our channel for more stories that remind us that everyone deserves to be seen, respected, and treated with dignity, regardless of what's in their bank account or the condition of their shoes.